When my friend asked me over to his place, it was a chilly and crisp winter evening. I recall each and every detail of the event. After such a long week, we had been planned to get together and catch up with one another. Despite the fact that his home was always warm and inviting, this time there was something different. His family had only recently erected a sauna. As someone who has never used one before, I was quite excited to give it a shot. It was indicated by my friend that his mother, Jody, would most likely demonstrate how to use it because she had previous expertise with it. At the time, I didn't actually give it much thought. My close friend greeted me as soon as I arrived, and we engaged in a quick conversation. Even though he had to go to run an errand, he urged me to use the sauna on my own and assured me that his mother would be there to assist me if I required assistance for any reason. I consented, despite the fact that I was feeling a little embarrassed. I happened to run into Jody in the corridor as I was making my way to the sauna. She gave me a friendly grin, as she often did, and inquired as to whether or not I intended to utilize the sauna. I nodded and explained the suggestion that her son had made. She said it with a gleam in her eye. "You're going to really adore it. Permit me to demonstrate how it operates." After feeling relieved, I accompanied her to the garden, where there was a tiny wooden sauna. As soon as she was inside, she gave a gentle explanation of how to change the temperature, the significance of maintaining proper hydration, and how to make the most of the experience. It was impossible for me not to notice how placid she appeared, with her hair gently framing her face, and her voice was so soothing that it was almost mesmerizing. Her eyes seemed to hold mine for a little bit longer than was strictly required, and her face was framed in the most beautiful way possible. It was something about her vibe that had the effect of making me feel both relaxed and a little bit uneasy at the same time. She paused for a brief period before telling me, "You'll be fine on your own, just relax and enjoy it." She stopped as she turned to depart, looking back over her shoulder after she had already turned. "You know," she added in a calm voice, "it is preferable if you remove your clothes so that the heat can achieve its intended effect. You won't experience the full benefit if you don't do that." Odd mixture of excitement and nerves washed over me at the same time. I had not anticipated that she would say that, but it was not surprising because, after all, it was a sauna. With a smile on her face, Jody walked away, and I remained there for a few while, confused of what to do next. In the end, I made the decision to take her recommendation. Following the removal of my shirt and slacks, the heat immediately engulfed me, causing my muscles to relax and reducing the tension that had been building up over the day. After waiting for a few minutes, the door opened with a creaking sound, and Jody peered inside to inquire about the state of affairs. My response was that it was flawless. After entering the room, she shut the door behind her and sat down next to me. The question was presented in a casual manner, but there was a playful look in her eyes that caused my heart to accelerate. "Would it be okay if I joined you?" I nodded, making an effort to maintain my composure, but I was experiencing a surge of adrenaline on the inside. As a result of the heat, everything around us became hazy, and we ended up in our own world. There was an undeniable undertone of tension and unsaid attraction that was boiling beneath the surface all throughout our conversation, which lasted for a while and included topics such as life, work, and education. There was a point in time when Jody softly placed her hand on my arm. She had a gentle touch that was almost sensitive, and I found myself moving in closer to her, pulled to her in a way that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Without a doubt, she became aware of the slight smile that was forming on her lips. She said, "You're tense," as her fingers delicately brushed across my flesh. "I was surprised to see you. You should let yourself relax." Her speech was calming, almost mesmerizing, and I could feel myself vanishing into the warmth of the sauna, into her presence. Her voice was comforting. The moment she moved a bit closer to me, my heart began to speed, and I had the sensation that the outer world had vanished. That steamy, private room was only occupied by the two of us at that moment. When I gazed into her eyes, I sensed something there that I had not noticed before: curiosity, and possibly even a sense of yearning. As her hand moved up to rest on my thigh, I found myself unable to control my breathing. She muttered, "It gets lonely sometimes up here in the cabin, especially when Mike's dad is away." She was working, and her eyes never left mine. It gets lonely sometimes, she added. I could feel my determination beginning to waver. Although I was aware that this was inappropriate on a number of different levels, Mike was my closest friend, and this was his mother. The manner in which she looked at me, the way in which her fingers stroked my skin, and the way in which she spoke made it impossible for me to think clearly. A rapid beating of my heart was palpable. She continued to play with Jody by sliding her hand about, her touch being light and playful. I was about to tell her something, but she silenced me with a gentle shush. She leaned in so close to me that I could feel her breath on my skin, and she murmured, "Don't say anything." As soon as I turned around, her lips were on mine, and they were gentle and warm. I could detect a hint of the wine that she had been drinking earlier in the day. A slow and deliberate kiss was exchanged, and I felt myself falling further and deeper into it. The sensation of her body crushing against mine caused me to forget about everything else, but the fact that she was rubbing my rod so vigorously with her hand inside my underpants. Over the course of at least 10 minutes, I was unable to maintain control and began removing her towel. Because her apples were in such good condition, I couldn't help but want to eat them. Whenever I sucked her, she adored it. Because she was holding my rod and placing it into her cave, she was able to take control of me. She began to ride on me as if I were the horse rather than the rider. My hands were on her hips, and she was having a good time on the horse ride. I was not in control of the situation. To be honest, I had no idea how long we remained in that position. I was so engrossed in the experience that I was unaware of the passage of time. Yet, I was unable to refrain from kissing her. My hands moved over her body, exploring and tormenting her. I couldn't stop moving. I continued to move. I had not anticipated the waves of pleasure that I felt whenever she touched me or let out a sigh for that matter. As soon as we were finished, she gave me a sly grin and stared at me through her eyes. She said, "We probably shouldn't stay in here for too long," yet her actions gave the impression that just the opposite was true. "I think we've still got a little time." I was aware of what she meant, and although I wanted to abandon the plan, I was unable to do so. In spite of the fact that there were numerous reasons why I ought to have retreated from her, I found myself drawn to her since she possessed an attractive quality. I was able to sense her hands on my chest and arms, which caused a fire to ignite within me that was as hot as the heater in the sauna. Over the course of the subsequent few minutes, we became so engrossed in one another that we forgot about the world around us. Only the way in which her body fit against mine and the way in which her lips moved with mine were of any significance. Despite the fact that it was so unexpected, everything seemed to be going just well. The boundary between right and wrong became hazy as we sat in the oppressive heat, our bodies entangled with one another. Aside from the two of us, there was nothing else that mattered at that very time but the overpowering draw to proceed, to investigate this link that cannot be denied. Before Jody finally spoke, her voice was gentle but resolute as she said, "We ought to leave before Mike begins looking for us." The stillness hung heavy there until Jody eventually spoke. The words that she spoke to me were like a wave of icy truth. "Mike is my closest buddy." In what way was I thinking? Nevertheless, as she stood there, adjusting her towel and throwing one more, lingering glance in my direction, I became aware that this was not quite finished. Both of us were unable to deny the fact that there was something that existed between us at this moment.